This is the Locked On Jets podcast with a special edition here on this Super Bowl Sunday. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com, with perhaps the only football podcast episode today that will not be about the Super Bowl because there is major New York Jets news. Fox Sports' Jay Glazer reports that the New York Jets have informed quarterback Aaron Rodgers that they will not bring him back in 2025, that the team is moving forward without Rodgers. So the tumultuous 2-year Aaron Rodgers era with the Jets seems to be over. There are so many different angles of this story to look at and break down, and we're going to do that in the days ahead. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday, breaking down the Jets. But my first takeaway is looking to the future, and it's a positive one. Jets have a new regime in place, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, and this was their first real major decision. I know they signed a fullback a couple of days ago, but the dealing with Aaron Rodgers and how they handled it was the first real test of this new regime. And I think they passed it with flying colors. And part of this is I think about the last couple of years, the way the Jets have been run. And I think about how many times there's been an obvious decision in front of the Jets that they've failed to make. And not only have they failed to make it, they've done the exact opposite and then sold it as a logical move. Not firing Nathaniel Hackett last year. Firing Hackett was the most obvious move. He was clearly in over his head as offensive coordinator. He was bringing nothing to the table, even if he was a close friend and confidant of Aaron Rodgers. Moving on from him after 2023, a slam dunk move. Jets failed to make it, and the Jets essentially sold bringing Hackett back as obvious. Well, Aaron Rodgers wants him back, and Rodgers will fix everything. I think about the Davante Adams trade. The Jets were 2-4 at the time. They looked nothing like a Super Bowl contender. It was obvious you don't throw bad money after good. It was obvious this all-in thing really wasn't working. And more importantly, it was obvious that Davante Adams was not the only thing standing between the Jets and the Super Bowl. Jets made the deal. And not only did they make the deal, they said, well, now we're all in. Now we're going to win the Super Bowl. It just made no sense. I think about even smaller things, like how many times the Jets have failed to get their first-round pick into training camp over like really, really minor issues, whether it's the timing of a bonus a player is going to get anyway, or offsets. If the player gets cut, do the Jets still have to pay his salary, a small salary? And 4 times in a 9-year stretch, the Jets failed to get their first-round pick into training camp on time. This is a team that has struggled for a lot of reasons, but it comes down to the most basic elements where the Jets have failed to do the basic things right. And I look at this landscape right here, and another obvious thing was just that like Aaron Rodgers could not come back to this team in 2025. And I almost view it, there were so many different reasons. It's almost like you're at a restaurant. I could give you a menu. If you don't like one reason, well, there's another option there. If you don't like that reason, there's another option. You could talk about his deteriorating level of play. You could talk about salary cap considerations. You could talk about just the need for an overall fresh start, how this era completely failed. And we are going to talk plenty about the lessons learned from the way the Jets have operated over the last couple of years and why this Rodgers era failed and what the Jets can take going forward with that. We'll talk about that on this week on our regularly scheduled episodes. But it was just clear that it really made no sense to bring Aaron Rodgers back. So this was another obvious decision sitting in front of the Jets. And this new regime, they made the obvious choice. And they did it in I think, a very thoughtful way. Aaron Glenn did not come in on day one with any preconceived notions. At his introductory press conference, he did not, tip his hand. It seems like the Jets took some time. They thought this through. They saw the obvious answer in front of them, and they did not drag it out. And we've seen it with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. We saw it 2 years ago with the trade the Jets had to make to get him and how long that was drawn out. We've seen that, Aaron Rodgers operates on his own schedule. And while there was no urgent need, we're weeks away from the beginning of the new league year. It's nice to see the Jets decided to not drag this out. It's nice to see that this is not going to be a drama point through the entire offseason, that the Jets have made a decision that they're going to move forward, that they're going to make a fresh start. There's going to be a clean break. There's going to be a new era of Jets football, and they're moving forward. Now, of course, this is just decision one. There are many, many major tasks ahead. The Jets need to build a new culture. The Jets need to improve their talent base at a number of key positions. Jets need to deal with the salary cap situation, which has become clogged, a salary cap which is very inefficient. The Jets need to get their salary cap into working order. These are going to be tough decisions. But one of the things that's really struck me through the years is that Jets haven't even gotten to the tough decisions because so many times the Jets have messed up the easy decisions. The Jets finally got an easy decision right. And it's the first major decision that a new regime had to make. And look, I understand it's a bit of a low bar because, comparing this regime to what the Jets have had in recent years, it's not hard to beat what the Jets management has been. But this was the first hurdle. It was a low hurdle, but the Jets cleared it. They made a considered decision. They made an informed decision, and they reduced the level of drama to a bare minimum. And I think that this is a good sign. Now, again, first step of a major task, but I think that Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji did well. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, let's talk about immediate considerations because there were a few arguments being made that Rodgers should be brought back if the team was focused on winning, that Rodgers was the best immediate option. I just don't think that's true, and I'll explain why that's not true as we continue here on the special Super Bowl Sunday edition of the Locked On Jets podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. You post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions, then quickly get in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Maybe the Jets should head to LinkedIn to try and find a new quarterback. Well, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's special edition of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets through the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot to win $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked On Jets podcast here on the Super Bowl Sunday, but we're not talking about the Super Bowl because the New York Jets have major news. Jay Glazer of Fox Sports broke it that the Jets have informed quarterback Aaron Rodgers that they will move on without him in 2025. And, it's only a report right now. The Jets have not confirmed it, but there have been some reporters who reached out to the Jets, and the Jets have responded with no comments, which is kind of telling because I think it would be very easy. If it wasn't true, it'd be very easy for the Jets to put out a statement. We're still in evaluation mode. That report's not true. We're still considering it. Very easy to swat this down if it wasn't true. I don't think the Jets would ever confirm it on the record. They'd probably give you a no comment if it was true. So certainly sounds like we're moving in that direction. Jets moving on without Aaron Rodgers. And there does seem to be a segment of the fan base who's going to be upset about this because I've heard this argument over and over, and not just from fans. I mean, I've heard it from a lot of people in the media. I just heard Adam Schefter say it a few days ago on ESPN that if you're looking for immediate results, Aaron Rodgers is still the best quarterback for the Jets in 2025. If you're looking to win the most games in 2025, there's no better option than Aaron Rodgers. And I think that that's a highly debatable point for a number of reasons. First of all, Aaron Rodgers was the Jets quarterback in 2024, and they went 5-12. So the idea that Aaron Rodgers is the slam dunk guy who's going to win you the most games, I think that's on very shaky ground because they didn't win a lot of games this year. And I understand that quarterback wins are not a quarterback stat, that they're not an individual stat, that it is a team game. But at the end of the day, people acted like Aaron Rodgers would be the guy that would take the Jets to the Super Bowl. They went 5-12 with him, and the team just really wasn't good. And a big source of the struggle was just the passing game could not get going. But the idea that, there's no quarterback comparable who's attainable for the Jets to what Aaron Rodgers can do, that's in Rodgers' current state. I think I just have a tough time believing that. If we're not talking about the guy who's won 4 MVPs anymore, we're not even really talking about an upper echelon quarterback at this point. I think Rodgers can still start in the NFL. I think, he's probably like a mid to low level starter. and there's value there. He's not a guy who's, you see certain quarterbacks step in, like your Tim Boyles, and they can't even play. You see even guys like Zach Wilson, who are probably like backup level quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is obviously a cut above these guys. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is incapable of being a starting quarterback in the NFL in 2025. But what I am saying is that he's incapable of being a driving force behind a team's success. If you put Rodgers into a situation where he's got a great offensive line and, a great defense, and, you've got stars all over the place, and you're in one of those situations where the quarterback's a game manager, I guess it could work. I mean, I think Rodgers' ability to stay healthy is a big question mark, because we've now had 3 straight seasons where he's played through injuries or missed time because of injuries. And at 41, turning 42, I don't know that that's going to change. But what I don't understand is the idea that there's no possible quarterback who can give you what Rodgers can give you. Because I can give you the numbers. I can compare his numbers with certain quarterbacks. How about Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins this past season had a better completion percentage, more yards per attempt, a better QBR, more yards per game, and their passer rating was comparable. Rodgers' was 90.5, Kirk Cousins' was 88.6. Now, there were some statistics where Rodgers beat Cousins, touchdowns in particular. So I'm not saying Cousins is necessarily better than Rodgers, but let's say look at those numbers. I think you could say those guys, we could compromise, say they were roughly equal. I mean, it's Kirk Cousins, guy who got benched, guy who's Falcons are going to cut despite owing him a ton of guaranteed money, a guy who's going to be available for really cheap. So you're telling me that there's no possible quarterback who could be as good as Rodgers? Well, I just gave you a guy who's like pretty much just crashed in Atlanta and is now on his way out of town. Another quarterback I'll give you, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, better completion percentage than Rodgers, better yards per attempt, better passer rating, better QBR. Their touchdown rate, so the percentage of passes that result in a touchdown, were the same. Russell Wilson had a better interception rate, a lower percentage of passes that turned into an interception. Yards per game were almost the same. Rodgers had 4 more yards per game. Their success rate was almost identical. Rodgers 43.9, Wilson 43.6. Success rate is a play successful? Do you get a certain percentage of the yards you need on first down, a certain percentage on second down? Do you convert third downs? So again, like, this is guys who are comparable. A guy who is going to be another guy who's going to be really available for cheap. Now, obviously, you'd like to do better than these guys, but I keep seeing over and over that, well, Rodgers is the best option for the Jets in 2025. That there's no way you can find somebody who could play at his level. Look, it's true that you can't find somebody who could play at the level of peak Rodgers, but the reality is the current version of Rodgers can't play at that level right now. You just see the decline. The mobility is practically gone. The arm really isn't what it used to be. He's just not the same guy he was in the past. And that doesn't even touch on the fact that it's not just about 2025 anymore. The Jets are no longer in all-in mode. The Jets are once again trying to balance the present with the future. And it would be very difficult to bring back Aaron Rodgers on his current $37.5 million cap hit. It'd be tough to bring back Aaron Rodgers at like half that amount. And that doesn't even touch on some of the other aspects I discussed earlier. Going down that menu I mentioned, that Jets really just need a fresh start. They need to turn the page from this era, which really did not pan out. But just tangibly speaking, I don't really understand the argument that like it's impossible to find a quarterback comparable to Rodgers, because I just gave you stats. I compared him with 2 guys who nobody wants. 2 guys who like probably aren't going to be brought back by their current team because of their level of play. One of whom was benched, and they played about equal to Rodgers. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Aaron Rodgers was worse than Russell Wilson or worse than Kirk Cousins, but I don't think he was better. I think you could say they were roughly equal. And those guys are going to be available for cheap. So there's no reason to bring back Rodgers at $37.5 million. Anyway, that's all for our special edition today of Locked On Jets. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be back with our regular Monday show. We'll have plenty more on Aaron Rodgers, a retrospective on what went wrong for the Jets the last 2 years and what they can learn from it. That's ahead on Monday. Until then, enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll chat again soon.